my number one commitment is to promote inner peace, ultimately based on warm-heartedness. That the way of promotion, not based on religious faith. Ancient Indians were our guru, not modern, not necessarily modern Indian. Modern Indians, sometimes I frankly see expressing, sometimes teasing, you see, too much westernized. So, you see, not much pay much attention about your real ancient knowledge.
Today, I would like to reflect on His Holiness's fourth commitment, which is to spread awareness about ancient Indian wisdom traditions, particularly amongst Indians themselves. And here, of course, what is relevant is that the Tibetan tradition, of which His Holiness is the prime ambassador, is really the Nalanda tradition. And what might we call the Nalanda tradition? So the Nalanda University flourished from the 5th century until the 12th century. My own alma mater, Cambridge University, where I spent 13 years for studying for multiple degrees, including a PhD and a postdoctoral position, and then teaching there. That university came up after the demise of the Nalanda University in India. So it was founded in the 13th century. So imagine the time at which Nalanda University flourished. What were the hallmarks of this Nalanda tradition? The hallmarks of it were a tradition that was based on dialectical discussion with all the other traditions in India at the time. And in fact, that is how they come to their own positions on tenets and various other things. The second thing is that they had a debate pedagogy. So the way they actually learn and teach is via debate. The third is that it was extremely rigorous and comprehensive. Comprehensive in the sense of a liberal arts education, where they had not just, teachings on tenet systems, on logic, on epistemology, on, of course, the wisdom, perfection of wisdom, and Abhidharma, and all these subjects, but they also had sciences, astronomy, and other things. So a really well-rounded education. It was extremely cosmopolitan, because in those days they had students coming from far afield, and students who subsequently also then went far afield. To just take one example, you have the Bengali master Atisha Sri Jana Dipankara, Atisha Dipankara. So now in the Tibetan tradition, he's called 𝘿𝙖𝙡 Atisha. So he was the Vice Chancellor of Vikramshila University, which was also one of the great universities along with Nalanda. He travels to Indonesia to get teachings. Very late in his life, beyond his 50s, he actually travels to Tibet. And in those days, you can imagine, he goes to Tibet, he learns Tibetan, and he actually spends the rest of his days in Tibet. So imagine somebody who was born in what is today Bangladesh, and this is his journey. So this is just one instant of the many Nalanda masters. So the Tibetan tradition, of which His Holiness is the living example, and he often makes a joke that he has lived on dal and chawal since being in exile since 1959. And his mind is entirely suffused with the teachings of these Nalanda teachers. And you see the Thankas behind me, the greatest of them, Arya Nagarjuna, Gompolundop, and many others. So his mind and his teachings are entirely based on the works, interpretations of the Buddha's teachings. And so, when His Holiness has talked about trying to revive this in India, what he's really talking about is reviving, the epistemology and the ontology that derives from this tradition. So epistemologically, there is a very rich literature in psychology and a map of the mind that would be very, very useful in today's age. On the ontology side, the Nalanda tradition's teachings have come very close to modern physics. And also, of course, so that is why, I think His Holiness is very keen to see its revival.
Kundun ki khadina songide. Ngazu khadina ya chi ngobo yamena physical hygiene, mental hygiene chik so gore. Chesa si learning program, tana si ki di Nalanda ki Dixon kal lagorta, ningba lavna digireta, ancient wisdom. Di khairesa nga chacha di inner hygiene rawa, mental hygiene rawa.
Buddhism was not taught in isolation. It was taught in the context and space of what it offered other systems and what it could learn from other traditions and systems, which is what is really the core of His Holiness's teachings. And again, as his ideas and commitments have continued to evolve. And and when I say evolve, I really mean the different kinds of emphasis. There was an umbrella that was covering all these ideas. And I felt that he has chosen to focus on India's rich civilizational heritage, not just knowledge. And it manifests in some significant ways. It manifests in, of course, his deep philosophy of non-violence, and then it manifests in the huge amount of the celebration of diversity in India. Interfaith harmony is built into it. Then the engagement, of course, with science, which means that with empirical knowledge, the aspiration of which is to understand the true nature of reality.
The people of India shall be forever grateful to His Holiness for his spiritual guidance and, more importantly, to have reconnected them with the ancient Indian knowledge or the Nalanda knowledge system. His Holiness's emphasis on peace, compassion, universal responsibility, social and religious harmony, despite the hardship, violence and turmoil he had to face in his homeland, speaks volumes of his commitment to humanity.
Now my number one commitment is to promote inner peace, ultimately based on warm-heartedness. That the way of promotion, not based on religious faith, but based on our biological factor and then scientific findings. That's the main reason, main sort of focusing, using these factors. And more compassionate mind, your physical health better, your relation with family member, community member, better, happier. Once we develop genuine sort of respect other, out of sense of concern of their well-being, then there is no room of violence, no room of cheating, no room of hypocrisy. If you, out of warm-heartedness, speak truthfully, honestly, and you can act transparently, that built trust, trust built friendship, happy society, happy family, irrespective of whether believer or non-believer. That's my main commitment.
Foundation for Universal Responsibility of His Holiness the Dalai Lama was established with the funds from the Nobel Peace Prize money, part of the funds. So when the Nobel Peace Prize was announced, His Holiness said he would invest some of that money to set up a foundation that would work on his non-political and non-Buddhist agendas, because there were other institutions and organizing doing this.
Nga danda flooring dami nangla ene ta lonyi sum stotere ene director ki genzing ki laga chede ye flooring dami miyu so de nga flooring dama tsuya de ne ni to gu de wa chine go so re ene tangbo tsuksa de ne daily ene lopro ga shi ene pegang la ene pa kis don de damdula za ene nangcho da de janga to dine ya chik so ki wo do chi trowa do chi khane ene de chine chokpa gyachimbo changye tawchi dili yudune ne chobade da chek so de la lada be pu mang cha re de na lada ko chik pola ma de ngaso Himalaya jong changma ne pe na Sikkim ne ngaso la ga ching yo Assam de wa ne pu ya pu de 네 아루나찰네 다 ngaji parsum tu bete po shukchimbo ye ne khuno ye piti la hol se thangmani de do che ngazo sopa di ngoma ina phage de bering de la ne ngazo te pat sopa gi ngone ne bus de static che transportation static de che ne po de rules ne sa pemba ni ma kadu ina che dili pogang la ma thine gi don de bla shu che ne po ni bya sum ya de zomne ge shela ne ta so riksong gi 아침부 이미 rapta ta tente shude yeshwe ngazo soba de inspire chasa ta de mikbet ta san ta de ta chik dilipogang ne re da dilipogang di miyu zo de ta ngazo kundu gi toke tamcha shi na ne da gi na version de ne ga la chitu ching so ro tente chiro
After I reached India, I was restart, review all those books which I learned more seriously. Then reading more books about the Nalanda master's writing, then including Buddha's own word. Then, emotionally, now I feel, many occasions, I publicly express, now sometimes I feel I'm son of India, because every particle of my brain fulfilled or filled by Nalanda thought, Nalanda knowledge. And this physical, now over almost 56 years, this physical survived by Indian dals, Indian rice, Indian chapati. So physically, mentally, I really consider son of India.
Ani thangbo nga pagi Dehradun naula kyabje samdorin buchi ki sabjong dinaula chimbai. Tadi chowo de youth chedure sonkerwa di chedure. Ta pagi chin che ani rimbuchi ki tanga zo kyagar ki riksong chowo di Nalanda tradition khande yome digor mangbo songre di donda chi ki sabjong dinre. Ta dine sine nga khare tas troala gorebe yamena tes donanda chilesong. Oh, ta ngazu gyagar ki riksu dende ting sabu dende yoba ani ngaya di lobjung chego gudus a rimboche ki dikapsu khare songre ta kheran so khesi ngone tane ting sabu dende lobjung cheya ki deba na ta kerik sum nane kharo chik jangore ta kerik sum di khare re Pali Sanskrit yamena phege.
And here, when you look at the trials and tribulations of the world and younger people today, I really feel quite sorry for them in some ways. There is an increase of mental health issues and depression. There is a lot of violence that we see around the world in terms of wars and, of course, at also community levels, individual levels. And there is, of course, yet the onslaught of AI and technology that is going to come. And its interference even with democratic systems and all of that. So the need of the hour then is really something that equips youngsters to deal with all these issues. And there the prescience and the modernizing instinct of His Holiness to have his first ever life commitment, which was to teach secular ethics or universal ethics in universities, in schools, and at very young ages. So if you see the trials that the world is undergoing even post-COVID, when we ought to have learnt the lessons of how we exist together or not at all, and what are the collective action problems that we face. But we find ourselves amidst terrible wars in the Middle East, in Ukraine and other places, and many other sorts of man-made problems. So I think in this, His Holiness's first commitment to teach universal ethics is very critical. And if you see, in a nutshell, the two pillars on which he argues for universal ethics is really our common humanity and having some kind of compassion on that basis. And the other thing is our interdependence. And if you look how close, modern thinkers in these areas, for example, some of the most famous writers on, for example, on non-violence, people like Hannah Arendt, her argumentation for non-violence very much rests on interdependence, our interdependence. So when you think of the convergence of, what His Holiness is promoting in terms of universal ethics and how that is really a nutshell the kind of final essence of the Nalanda tradition, ancient Indian wisdom traditions. You see his skillfulness, as a leader, and as someone who has really thought about the future of the world and the people who are going to inhabit it in the 21st century and beyond, and is not thinking in terms of any particular religion or single community per se. So then, of course, the courses that I teach when I teach universal ethics at my university, which I have for 4 years, and I continue to do so now, and I have a course on great powers and non-violence as principle and strategy. All of these are things, are ideas that one can trace back then to these essential kind of teachings, I would say, for the younger generation that are to do with ethics, and finally are to do with their own possibilities for happiness and contentment of both a short and long-term nature. And so therefore, in terms of His Holiness being an inspiration, I cannot think, even amongst the very amazing lineage that is the Dalai Lama lineage, I think His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama really stands out for his amazing kind of, instinct for modernization, as I say. On many issues, he has stood courageously when the much easier route would have been to, give in to one kind of pressure or another. Whether we talk about women in Buddhism, whether we talk about, the Shugden issue, whether we talk about, so many other issues, he has really taken the most kind of, advanced progressive line. And therefore, in my own journey, which is a very natural one, because I have been studying at Tibettv House, Delhi for the last decade. And over time, I just felt that the philosophy is so compelling. It is perhaps the most compelling philosophy I have ever come across in all the studies that I have done in my life. So it seemed like a natural next step for me to ordain with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which is the greatest honor and privilege of my life.
And I feel deeply, sometimes it's hard to imagine that I've had the good fortune to have been born at a place and time where His Holiness is accessible. And I met His Holiness in 1981. And at that time, he was not as busy as he is now. So I was perhaps one of his first Indian students, lay persons. And over the years, he has been very kind and indulgent towards me.
Those lobjong chegi ani kundun gi ta subject soya ne yamena kegur dinde chene ta dine sine mi ra thwere nga dharam sa lego ya gi phege jaya gi gimchen khare yume ta dine geshe ta rimbuche ta khepa mangbo bagi denne shoy ngarang gi translation che kegur che those khasakala UP mase Rajasthan ta Maharashtra da menal ngas dos che tine mimang la khare le chik donanda sukchem bulere
ta silani singi ta pula khap to thega la ya chi rem to ala ta cho mangse de ne gegen de ne jongda te ne gegen gyune to silani je so sang tangbo lo tangbo khurang zo gegen ngapya la ne jongda phu re ne jongda la da la tando ina silani de facilitator se do ta gegen de zo la jongda ting de silani jongda ting mi nga he re ne mi nga ge ne shi de ne tanda Gashung rangi and Ladashung rangi and Gehen the Gonam Jonda trading, Kozo and Tenangi chick and Anzo Tadamazo flaring them in a lagacheting, Lozama Malashi, Pumuchi, Koranre. Penanzo the Kasara, the Lila chick conversion diversion in between modern science and Buddhist philosophy, saying and so that the Niva de Longomaji and Chick Talo the Mixeg is successful show chason. Talo ngazo pepe tujungi loptok sopache ne ngazo Arunachal ki loptok sopache Sikkim ki loptok sopache Lahore Spiti Kinnaur Ladakh loptok sopache mixe ki ngazo khoran zula lagate ne chik chedu samba ne chik kharse ore chik pugula koto pe ala yado
tangarang ki amyong chena thangma nis nga pagi ganden la te doleng chere dikor ta gyagar ki khasa khala state chonga chutok ne denes mi dwe gegen ta sing ki lobjun chegen retired officers ta phagi gisem nambayam do mi nima nga ngas ta nacho ki lakbar do di samkhan ripa ro 다 디난기 따롭다 샘칸 리바 칸데 요메 가기 돌랭 데네 중레 빼하고 중레
I think some of our significant initiatives, which are still current, is that we have set up Dalai Lama chairs, which work at 3 universities, Goa University, Somaya University in Bombay, and Punjab University. So this draws and attracts eminent scholars from different fields, including Tibetan scholars, to come and talk about His Holiness's commitment to India's civilization heritage. And equally importantly is that we have set up, we give anything between 5 to 7 research fellowships to Indian academics to engage in the study of India's civilization heritage as seen and promoted by His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself. And a personal passion that I have as a chela, and I keep saying that I am just a student of His Holiness and an unworthy one, is that we should branch out into Dalai Lama studies, that we start doing academic work and research in a serious, structured manner on the Dalai Lama himself as a great teacher. So just as we study Christ and Buddha and Prophet Muhammad or Gandhi, we should be studying His Holiness. So we are completing 25 years of our program called 𝑘𝑚, which is both wisdom, compassion, and women in conflict management and peace, in which we have worked on issues of gender, related to women as not just passive sex, but as activists for peace and understanding. We run a Gurukul program where Indian students go to Dharamsala and spend up to 2-3 weeks in an immersion program to experience what Tibetan culture and Tibetan heritage. But we find that what we offer is unique in many ways, and because we are offering students and young people and a cross-section of people. So in our programs we will have, over the years, we've had cabinet ministers, we have had engagements with the President of India, we've had, right from the grassroots to the top, we've had the support and encouragement and participation of a cross-section of Indian society from all over India. So for example, we run an interfaith pilgrimage program where young people go to places of worship of other traditions and actually live there, spend some time there, and experience the experience of what it means to be a follower of another faith.
딩염도 따라서 미규 쏘디 다다빠도 트레이닝 가서 제나 랍다니 기게 가시시게 한 거거든. 디에는 항상 누바다 된 것도 랍다 기게 뎁 키워 마양상 다동아서 라다라 랍다직 adopt the marta adopt ho chik la kegen sangma teaching staff non teaching staff kegen da leche da sangma la the sea learning gi ma shi gi subject de phi malab ni ta non teaching staff tenso la sea learning gi value de konso la ma shi ring la she kegen de so she labda kura to da she lamdon se chi yore lamdon she la nga so sea learning model school lamdon she se gyuri pena get yan ne da lamdon nangu gi hall de so sea learning gi chen da pu de be stake out the sea learning jartik sea learning is jaya do chik te pedo labda do chik so go something nga so something ta do nga so charji na la ta lo yongyu gi lo de na la nga so yong gi labda do ni sum chik nga so adapt na me to full staff la ene nga so chik sea learning lo jonte ene pu de so la gyura thong do tai
I see it as all very synergistic because I think, when I go into the classroom or in many other worlds, I think I meet younger Indians and they have a lot of questions because they are also facing a lot of challenges in the modern age that were not there previously, whether it's on the family front, economic front, nuclear families, other kinds of, changes that they are unable to or not equipped to deal with, and they want some tools. And there, just to give you one example, and I will end here, is this, just to give you one example of the beauty of the Nalanda tradition and its, application in a modern age. If we think about 5 ever-present mental factors: contact, attention, discrimination, feeling, and intention, one of the things that this we learn is to just, how do we change our discrimination in order to change the feeling that it generates, which then brings about a completely different intention. So for example, if I look at another person and rather than seeing them from a different community, a different religion, a different color, and feeling terribly uncomfortable and acting in violence, how about if I see them as just another human being like myself, and I'm able to generate a very happy feeling and act in great peace and, welcoming. So those are the kind of tools, that His Holiness has promoted through his first commitment, his fourth commitment, and his entire life. So once again, Tunkar Tashi Dele, Your Holiness, and wish you a long and healthy life. And thank you for being such a great inspiration. To be born in your age and your time is one of the biggest good fortunes of my life.
𝘿𝙖𝙡𝙖𝙢𝙖𝙪 ane sgongtang gopchu phepsbe ane thongskar tushchenla ane tashis delekshichin.
परम पावन 14वें दलाई लामा जी के 90वें जन्मदिन के अवसर पर मैं एक भारतीय होने के नाते अपनी तरफ से, परिवार की तरफ से और पूरे भारतवर्ष की तरफ से बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं कि आप दीर्घायु रहें और तमाम अज्ञान लोगों के जीवन में आप प्रकाश लाते रहें और आप स्वस्थ रहें, निरोग रहें, दीर्घायु को प्राप्त हों, ऐसी मेरी प्रार्थना है। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
So for me, the contribution of His Holiness is both what he says, what he does, but most importantly, who he is.
My fourth commitment is revival of ancient Indian knowledge in modern India. So many occasions I sort of express the modern Indian. Now, as I already mentioned, modern India should pay more attention for revival of ancient Indian knowledge. And you have the ability and opportunity to combine modern education and ancient Indian education. So that I usually describe the hygiene of physical, similarly hygiene of emotion. You can combine these two things. So now, 86-year-old, but do you see my face? Okay, so another, I think 15, 20 years, I think I will live. Okay.